Like, I think most of us, once you finish college, we're just so confused. What should I do? What are my possible options? Should I go study? Should I do? Should I start working? Should I take some time off? What should I do? So once I graduated, I knew one thing: I needed time to do things that I really liked. So I took time off and I did social work for 1 year. Taught kids from different backgrounds. Saw so many things which I wouldn't have otherwise. And in that year, I also made up my mind to do the Mountbatten internship. I was aware of Mountbatten program because Abhilasha Agrawal, she is my senior. She had done BSc exams again, and she had worked with Deutsche Bank in London. So I was very aware of the program, and in my final year, I remember some people from Mountbatten had come, and they'd done a full program on how a presentation on how the program works, what are the pros and cons, what do you get out of it, and why you should do it. That time I think I was not as convinced because it seemed just like any other program, and only after Abhilasha did it and I got a personal sort of feedback on how the challenges she faced, what she made out of it, and the difference that I saw in her when she left and when she came back. That is, I think, what hit the chord, and I said, okay, I should probably apply. Now I'm not working for Mountbatten, and you probably think why I would want to do this talk with you, right? So, like I said, Abhilasha, Harshdeep was my batchmate, and he also worked with UBS. These two people, and Jitin sir, of course, there he is. These three people really helped me make my decisions. I remember coming to college when I had my offer letter and being confused out of my mind. What should I do? Should I really? Is it worth 1 year? Should I just go? Should I take a job? And these three people really helped me make this decision. And now that I've done it, I don't think like I can thank them enough because it has definitely been one of the most tremendous years of my life. And so I thought if they helped me make my decision, why can't I help probably someone else who can afford to do it and who is deserving to do this opportunity. And hence I decided to just come and talk to all of you about the program. So how I've thought about this is I'm going to just give you an overview of how the program works, what you need from your end in terms of the application, your SOP, your LORs, my interviews, my work experience in London, and also I thought a couple of things that I did outside of my work experience, which was not mandatory, but I opted to do it because I wanted to come back and be able to justify my 1 year. And when I was leaving, I just knew one thing: I wanted to make the most of my year. If it meant traveling, if it meant different people, if it meant experimenting, I wanted to do all of that. So at the first stage, you will decide if you want to go to London or if you want to go to New York. I chose London because I'd been to London and I'd been to New York, and there was just something about London. It was very compelling. That city really grows on you. And when I left that city, I just knew I will come back one day. That time I thought I'll go back to study. I didn't think I'll go back to work and be in swanky Canary Wharf, but life had it. So that's the first thing you decide if you want to go to New York or you want to go to London. My junior Samad, I'm not sure how many of you know about him. So he's in New York right now, and he's the first one to go to New York. Three of us, that would be Abhilasha, Harshdeep, and myself, we went to London, and all of us had a great time. So the statement of purpose. The first, as soon as you decide, okay, London or New York, then the next thing you also have to decide is if you want to do a postgraduate certificate or MBA with them. So postgraduate certificate will be in international business. You will do 3 modules, and the classes will be held every second weekend. And I think I'll tell you more about it later. So with the application process, there's a statement of purpose and letters of recommendation. Like all the master's program that you must be looking at, statement of purpose is the first document through which Mountbatten will be acquainted with the person you are. So Mountbatten's never seen you, Mountbatten does not know who you are, and that is the document through which you will talk about yourself, about your strengths, and answer that big question: why do you want to do this program, and why should it be you and not someone else? It's preferable that you ask all your university professors to write your letters of recommendation as opposed to your school teachers, because they are the ones who've seen you recently, and they are the ones who will be able to sort of give a light on how dedicated and sincere you are as a student. And that is exactly what Mountbatten wants to know. They want to know that if they are picking up someone from an international place, countries all over the world, that the people who come in will not mess it up. And your teacher's word is definitely going to play a very significant role in that. Statement of purpose, right? So the the big question, why do you want to do it? I remember when I was writing my statement of purpose and there were so many ideas going in my head. One of the first things that was mentioned on the Mountbatten side was, do not just fill in this application if you want to come to London. Have a goal in your mind, right? Like, just because I want to go to London, I want to do the Mountbatten program is a completely no-no. You should know why you are doing this program. So I'll tell you how I went about my statement of purpose. Like, I think many of you, I also didn't know what I exactly wanted to say 5 years or 10 years from today, but I had vague ideas, so I used examples. So I didn't mention, but I was also the editor when we started the Gazette. I was the part of the first student council when we hosted the Xenia. So I used all of that experience in my statement of purpose. I combined that with my educational interests. I love maths, so I don't know if anyone does, but and finance subjects. So I used all of that, mixed that, and sort of justified why I wanted to do this year. So what I also understand is, I spoke to a lot of people who were writing their statement of purpose. For example, my friends for masters, they all use examples, right? Something that you've done, a challenge that you faced, why you, and the answer why you will be answered by the qualities that you've shown, by the challenges you faced, by the opportunities that were given to you, and you made the most of them. And that is, I think, what makes the statement of purpose very strong. And obviously the big question, how Mountbatten internship puts in and fills in well with your short-term and your long-term goals. So even if you don't know what you want to do, say 10 years from today, I'm sure you have some vague idea. So sit down, think about it, and obviously sell yourself in the SOP. Tell them why you, and tell them that you have done things why you deserve this internship. So I wrote my statement of purpose, used a lot of examples, the challenges that I faced while I was setting up the editorial board, how I overcame them, and how that goes on to show leadership or organization abilities. Then letter of recommendation. So I'm not sure how many of you have interned in your first, after your first or second year, but if you've interned and if you can actually ask your manager during that internship to write a letter of recommendation to you, that would be absolutely fantastic. 2 would be preferable from your professors, KRC sirs right here. And after that, so after I set in my SOP and LOR, that was the first stage, yeah. Mountbatten has to pick up a few candidates, then they will interview next. So like with masters, I'm not sure how many of you are actually researching, but with masters, if you send in your application early, it's more advisable because you have a better chance of selection. But in Mountbatten, once the deadlines have been closed, then they pick up all the applications at once and then choose the people they want to interview. So I was lucky enough, I crossed the first level, and then I was interviewed by Mountbatten. First interview was a telephonic interview, which was more like they wanted to get to know about my SOP, what I had written, and to explain to them who I was and why I wanted to do the program. And this question, why you want to do the program or why you want to work with the company you'll be selected at, is very cliche. So just, and everyone asked it, right? So they've asked these questions over and over to everyone. But then they want to select candidates who can give a different answer. So that is when one thing helps you. You research a lot. You research on how you're going to stand by and answer why this program. And they'll ask you at every step. So I was interviewed by Mountbatten in the first round. Very, very nice lady interviewed me. After that, I went on with the second round. My application went further. That was a video conference. That was a bit daunting, I remember, because there was this really big screen and there were 3 people from 3 parts of the world. One of them had my transcripts, one of them had my SOP, one of them had my CV, and all 3 of them had to ask me questions all at once. So that went on for really long. That was a 1-hour interview, and she again asked me about whatever I did in my SOP, my CV. But one thing I remember that she asked me around that time was a question regarding current affairs. And that is one thing which I also saw was common with the interview that I had with KPMG. So from that, and even recently when I got my final job at Morgan Stanley, I was again asked something about current affairs. Because you've done economics, so they expect you to know at least what's going around. So all of you who don't read newspapers, please start reading newspapers. It's really, really important. That interview went on for 1 hour, and I think they asked me everything that they could about 21 years of my existence. which was daunting, but again, I think it was a really good experience. After that, there was this lag. So how it happens is, so after you clear the second stage, that is, you've convinced Mountbatten that you are a potential candidate, they pass on your CVs to different banks, all the banks that they have tie-ups with. So they would have passed on my CV to different banks. But I didn't hear from them for about 2 months. And I literally thought, okay, this is not happening. Probably my CV is not going forward. And I started looking for jobs, right? Because I had to do something. But 2 months after that, I remember, I got an email which said, oh, Morgan Stanley has selected your CV and you will be interviewed today in 3 hours. I was so nervous, it's not even funny. It was like a life-changing interview and I was so nervous. And first of all, I didn't realize, because Morgan Stanley was not on the website. So I was thinking probably UBS or Deutsche Bank, or Bank of America, I'd go to it. Then comes Morgan Stanley. And I still remember jumping when I got that email and being all excited to go and give the interview. But obviously being a bit nervous. So my boss, my to-be boss then, he called me because they can't interview face-to-face, so they pick up the phone and do a phone interview. My boss called me that evening and in his thick British accent asked me questions. And that went on for about, again, half an hour to 45 minutes. And I think the toughest part of that interview was his accent. I just didn't understand. What are you talking about? Like, our accents are just so goddamn different. But, so he asked me, in fact, a lot of questions around economics, finance, banking. At this point, I'd like to say that it's very important for you to research once you get this job profile or any job profile, when you go for a job, to research as much as you can. Because first it'll be about why you want to do the program, and then it'll be about why you want to be a part of this company, and which will further go down to why this division. So only if you research will you be able to answer a question, and if you don't know something, how much can you bluff, right? So he asked me a lot of questions. One more thing here I'd like to point out is, he asked me a lot of questions on economics, because I majored in economics. So I don't remember the exact questions, but he went on. And that is also one thing that I saw with my other interviews that I gave in KPMG or Morgan Stanley again. They always see what your major is in, and they always tend to ask questions around it to make sure that you know what you're talking about, to make sure that your concepts are clear. So before the interview, it would be a good idea if you just sort of go through whatever you've done. They're not going to ask you definitions, obviously. They just need to understand your understanding of what you've done. So if you say you're an economics major, you should be able to justify it. It'll be a good idea to sort of go through whatever you've learned or done, probably in final year or something. And also, because economics is a subject that you can relate to whatever's happening around you. So, for example, the crisis. So you probably want to relate to that. Also, one more thing is, if you do research about a company, that is really good, because then it shows that you're interested. It shows that you've done your homework, and that is a really good impression. Because that person is not going to talk to you face to face, he's just going to call you. And whatever you talk about, whatever information you have, is always going to be the game changer for you. One of the things that I did in my telephonic interview, whatever 3 hours time that I had to prepare for it, was I wrote down a couple of things, because it was a telephonic interview, so I had that advantage of having a paper in front of me. And I practiced it with my parents to just make sure I'm not sounding like an absolute idiot. I practiced, which is really good, because once or twice, because there are these couple of questions that they could ask. Also, Mountbatten sends you a PDF file in which they give you the sort of questions that are expected. This is only you get this questionnaire once you've cleared the first 3 stages, which would be application, the 2 rounds of interview, and then they will send you a questionnaire of possible questions that the employer or whoever interviews you is going to ask you. So that was really helpful, right? Because of that, I already had an idea of the question that could be asked, and then in my 3 hours, all I had to do was research about the division and about the firm. So that was helpful. And try to practice. One thing which is very important in a telephonic interview is keep smiling. I know it sounds really stupid. I'm smiling, he's not going to see me. How does it work, right? But they get to know. If you're nervous and you're jittery, they'll get to know, because you have to understand they do this pretty much like all the time. They interview people from all over the world. So they know when you're nervous, they know when you're smiling, and they know when you're confident, even if you're not sitting in front of them. That is important. Also, remember to be polite at the end of the conversation. Okay? Any questions? Because I don't want to be like I'm talking, no one's asking anything.
Just for everybody's clarity, when you say they ask you questions on economics, they expect you to academically understand what you studied here.
Definitely. So even though that's what I think is that only if you have the academic understanding of it will you be able to even explain in the layman language, right? If you just don't know what you're talking about, how will you ever explain? So they don't want to know definition. They don't want you to duck to a definition and tell them.
Do you remember any example, any particular question, anything vaguely?
So when I was giving this interview, he asked me so many things, I don't remember.
I'll give you one and tell me if there was something like that. Say, how does the depreciation of Indian currency affect its inflation?
So, like I said,
is that a question they could ask?
They could, right? Because like I said, they want to be sure that you are aware of what's happening around you. So, in one of the stages, I'm not sure which one, they asked me about the crisis, and they asked me of what my understanding was, and that is what. So, even if they don't ask you to explain all the terms, but because you've done economics and you know, so you can use that as a platform to sort of explain them at a higher level than what probably a non-economics graduate would.
And before you went, you shared with me that you mentioned that you've done this particular program and they were quite excited about it. Can you share that with us?
In fact, now that you mentioned, I was going to say this. So my boss, when he called me, I was really like, oh my god. So I started talking to him and he's like, oh yeah. And the first thing he said was, oh, what a fantastic degree. And I'm like, okay, why are you being so sweet? But he really appreciated it. In fact, I did a video for the University of London, and in that, that is one of the first few things that I mentioned, because because you've done something really worthwhile, and just to have people appreciate it was very nice. Even so more, when I went to London and I told them that I'd done this degree, quite excited, because just the whole idea that someone in a country far off in India can do a program like this really did excite them. And I know what you want me to say. One of the reasons why my boss told me, like, I don't know, we just happened to have this conversation on how could he interview different people. So he told me that the few reasons he chose me was because of economics, because I could talk very clearly in English. I know it sounds really stupid, but you'd be surprised how people, now that I've seen different ethnicities, you'd be surprised at how different people in different parts of the world don't have a strong command over English, and that really works as an advantage for us, that we can talk to them in their language and talk much better than them in a much clearer version. So that was clearly one of the reasons, and he clearly mentioned it. So yeah. Then I was talking to you about PGC and NDA.
This is another question.
I want the students to ask.
Why
are the students not asking?
But this is a question they wouldn't know what to ask. Is 1 year work experience required as a mandatory requirement?
No. A lot of, so the program, how it works is, it had all Americans and I was the only Indian, which I thought was one of the challenges in my year abroad. I thought I'll talk about it later. Most of them were fresh university graduates, and they were from varied fields, right? So someone had done accounting, someone had done business, someone had done management. So there's no hard and fast rule that you have to have a major in this subject and then only you can get selected in an internship, or you have to have worked 1 or 2 years for you to do this. But personally, what I thought, I was a fresher, so my first job, and I felt really cool to say it in my first job. But I think if I would have probably, my opinion, I would have had some sort of experience before going, it would have helped me in a different manner, because I would have been exposed to the sort of functioning that are already there in the market or on the job, and then have some experience and expertise I would have taken forward and sort of instilled it further with this 1 year. But then again, that's personal, like that's my personal thought. The other way to look at it was my first job, and I didn't know anyone I'd work with, I didn't know who I'd live with, and I didn't know anyone in that country, no friends, no family, just packed my bags and left, which I thought was one of the reasons why I wanted to do it, because I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to test my waters, and I wanted to be able to live outside of my comfort zone. And having done that for 1 year is what gave me the confidence for my next move. So I'm going to work for Morgan Stanley in Mumbai now, a full-time employee, and I fly this Sunday and start working from Monday. Because I had that confidence of living by myself and taking care of myself for 1 year, which is really not easy. It is very glamorous, right? This is really glamorous. You go to London and you do all these awesome things. But coming from an Indian family, where everything's being done for you to begin with, you're so spoiled. And I saw that with the Americans because I lived with them. They have always done everything for themselves. But we are like so spoiled and also emotionally so attached. So very, very different values, very, very different culture. Coming from such a mindset, it was a little difficult, I would not deny. Especially when you don't know anyone, you don't know anything. But if you come out of it, right, if you make the most of it, it definitely gives you the confidence. And this is exactly why I got the confidence and I said, okay, so you're based in Bombay, fine, I'll do that job. I will move cities again. And 2 years back, if someone would have asked me to go to Bombay or any other part of India and work, I would have been like, no, thank you. I'm not going to do this. So it's completely, I think, what I really want to tell all of you today is, this year is completely what you make out of it. It's an internship, agreed, and I know how internships are thought of as in India. It's not like that. You go in a professional environment, you work with people who are very senior to you. You cannot be not sincere and think it's an internship and you're just an intern and you pass off. You have to be sincere. So you have to work hard, and especially if you now want a job at the end of it. It was not a short thing, by the way. I had to go through views. Go for it.
Okay, you interned in operations, right?
I didn't know in operations.
So do you also have for like trading, sales, and other front office division? Like
Yeah.
you mentioned that when you apply for the internship.
So basically, you can mention your different streams that you want to go in, like that be finance, marketing, HR, legal. But primarily, Mountbatten is only the middle of our houses, so you can't go into trading. Because once you go into trading floor, you'll realize why. Because they mostly have traders who are working in the core offices, that would be London or New York. They've already done a 2-month or 3-month internship within their university when they were studying in UK or US, and eventually got placed with those firms. So Mountbatten does not work in the trading floor. That's actually a good question. I'm going to come to that. So now I think I go on the sort of, one more thing that I wanted to tell you was I had an option, right? So before I was going, I had an option of doing a full-time job at KPMG or doing this. And I think I would have been the most sad person to have had 2 offers because I was so confused. I think being Indians, we are just not as risk averse because we think, okay, education's over, let's do a full-time job. These many years of experience, this is the MBA, then get married, this is a set life. And that's what my parents also said, that why do you want to leave a job? Like the market is so bad, it's such a good company, it's a good, and I got a good division also. And I was really confused. That's when I remember coming to college and talking to Jitin sir for 1 hour that I don't know what to do because I couldn't have just left one company for other because both the names are good. And then the decision, what Jitin sir also made me realize and why I took this decision was that I thought of it as long-term perspective. So when I have to apply for MBA or Masters, this is what's going to make a difference. Even when you go in the job, right? My friend who was working in American Express, he told me that even in his interview or later on, they look for international experience. My friend and I had done summer school, and that did count. So when he was being interviewed or later on, they look upon you for that. And this way, it's on your CV or on your MBA application that you have done your 1 year abroad. It shows that you're definitely adaptable because you have gone to a country that is so different from yours. You don't know anyone or anything. And it shows that you are someone who's willing to take up a challenge and the risk associated with it. And I think that would make a fantastic MBA application or a CV, and employers do look up to it. So later on, when I started my process of looking for a job in Morgan Stanley in Mumbai, I sort of saw the difference it made, and I will talk about it. So all of you who have that question probably, why not a full-time job over an international experience? This is what I thought. And one of the other reasons which you can think of is, this is the only time in your life you can probably do something like this. Probably when you're 25 and you have more responsibilities and you'd be willing to work at only one position. You wouldn't want to go and do an internship then because you'd want things to have set for you by then. This is the time to experiment, explore, and challenge yourself. So I thought of all these things, and after 2 longest weeks of my life, I sat on that flight to London, and I still remember my first day. I was very excited. It was a fantastic journey. I'd like to now probably talk about the sort of work experience I did so that you get the gist of work that is given to you. But before I start, I'd like you to know that every intern, so the other Americans that I live with, or the other Americans who are in the program, and myself, we had a very different experience, right? So none of the professional experience would sort of would sort of overlap in each other, because we all were placed in different divisions, in different firms, we worked with different people, and all of this together makes your one experience what it does at the end of it. So I worked in operations. I was in the business management team. How operations is, we basically handle a couple of financial products and what goes on after the traders book or post an IPO, whatever goes on. I was lucky, I think, because I was directly working with the global COO of that division. So I got exposed to a lot of seniority. I did get responsibility, which I didn't think an intern would, because I wasn't sure how they would really take me as an intern. I got responsibility, and I basically did a lot of analysis for them, and I worked around their deployment strategy. So it was basically getting used to a lot of different systems, doing reporting, trying to understand different systems and how they all fit in, and just how to help my boss, who was at a very senior level, help him make his big decisions, which I thought was one of the big challenges. Once you just walk in as an intern and you directly have to work with executive directors and MDs, it does intimidate you, because I have never worked before, and then all of a sudden I just go and, oh, here, report to the ED, who then became the CEO, and then work only with MDs and EDs. So if I made a small mistake, it would not be small anymore, because I was reporting to senior people, which I thought was a fantastic learning. And one of the other great things which I thought I could have backed for was I worked for a lot of different teams. This year gives you that scope and space to sort of learn what the different teams and different divisions within operation do, and that is what I think I also got for, to sort of widen my own learning and knowledge about the whole of operations. So my boss was obviously very nice, and he was very eager that I make the most of my year itself. So I worked with a lot of different teams, and working with a lot of different teams also meant working with a lot of different people with different temperaments. And people in New York are completely different from people in London. They are much more, I'd say, impatient, and you always have to be on the toes with them. So you learn all these things, right? After this 1 year, I know that I can now handle people with different temperaments. No matter how my boss will be, I think I will be fine, because I've handled that, I've done that, and that does give you a lot of confidence. Ask as many questions, please make mistakes and learn from them.
I was wondering how many hours a week were you working, and how many hours did you dedicate to self-study for whatever master, whatever you're doing?
Good question. So the work. So again, they say in the letter that you get from Mountbatten, they say your work hours are 9 to 5, but obviously I work for longer, because it depends on what you want to make out of it, right? So I took in a lot of additional responsibility, and I worked for about 9 to 6:30, which is not bad at all, but it's about just making use of that, and yeah, that's decent enough.
65 to 70 hours, right?
Yeah.
65 to 70 hours, right?
Yeah, that's decent enough.
Yeah.
And then for self-study, so you'd usually have classes on the weekends. That would be every second weekend you'd have these classes. I did the PGC, so I can't talk about the MBA. So PGC had 3 modules, and they went on for about 3 months each.
And like fatigue is now a common theme in all of, in banking and all. Tiredness and fatigue is a common theme in like all of this. So didn't you feel tired out? Weren't you burnt out by the end of the like recently, like an analyst passed away in London only from, because he worked back to back.
It was definitely, it did get better me at first, because at first it's also just about getting used to sitting as many hours in front of like computer screen. But then you have to get your way around it, right? Because you have to understand, even once you start doing a full-time job, wherever you work, once you apply for your GMAT or your MBA, you have to take out time. So in fact, that's what I thought was one of the good things of 1 year, because I was still in touch with my books. So now if I have to probably think of my GMAT or my CAT, I have been in touch with my books, I'm not like completely left them. And one of the few good things about the PGC program was you had to submit assignments. And we've never done that, right, in an Indian schooling system, nothing. 3,000 word essays, and I've never written that, which I thought was again a really good way of learning. And like I said, the presentations and the assignments is what kept you going. And the teachers were really nice. They were all Britishers, and they were very helpful, and they taught really well. So that was a plus, I thought, for the program. And I was in touch with my books, which is so important, right? Because if you just sort of completely get into work and you just don't touch your books for a while, then it does get onto you once you have to pick up your books again. So I thought that was one of the positives. And yeah, any questions?
How important is Excel or any other computer software for that matter?
So that depends from the sort of profile to profile, right? So my roommate, for her, Excel was really important because she was doing reporting on a daily basis. But for myself, like I said, I did a lot of analysis, so I use Excel, but I sort of use presentation more because I had to help my boss come up with the end product of the strategies we make. So I was more in the presenting side of it, and so I sort of use my analysis on the Excel and use it in presentations. But that would depend job to job. So there could be a job which has a lot of reporting or a lot of financial analysis. You probably use Excel more. Any other question? Because I'm tired talking.
Were you interviewed after the internship, or were you offered the job directly after the internship?
So that's a very good question. Okay, first of all, those 6 months after which I sort of decided I want to still work in Morgan Stanley. In that 6 months, I was experimenting, right? So like I said, I spoke to different team members of different teams and asked them what they do on a daily basis and try to understand where my interests fit in. So by those 6 months, I knew I wanted to be in banking, and I used that sort of time. And I would actually advise all of you to do that. This year, you should use it as something, even if you don't know really what you want and what you really like, you would definitely know what you don't want to do. And both the things are equally important. So just go out there, experiment, work with different teams, talk to different people, and you definitely get a very good gist of it. Also, one of the good things is that they are very cooperative. So once I started working, I was very amazed, but everyone actually went out of the way to help me, which I was really amazed at and was one of my apprehensions when I first went. So that's just how it was. And for my final job, I started, so it depended on my performance. Every 6 months, so that we biannually, you will have a performance review. So depending on my performance, and looks like my boss is happy with me. He recommended me back to people in India. And then we also had to look for wherever the open roles were. And operations is a very vast division. So I could, and since I had spoken to different people about different sort of areas that they were, I also had an idea where I can apply for a job within Bombay. And I sent in my CV to different sort of managers in different divisions, and it took forever. I was interviewed again. I sent in my CV for 3 or 4 different roles, I think, and I was interviewed for all of them. So one of them was again a video conference because that person was in Hong Kong. I had telephonic interviews with my current team where I'm going to go. My vice president and my director, they both grilled me because they really okay. And I forgot to mention, this is the first time Morgan Stanley had a setup in Mountbatten. So I'm the first intern from Mountbatten who will be going to work in Bombay as a full-time employee. So he spoke to my boss recommended me, and I had my interviews. I had to wait, and then finally I got my offer on my last day of work. So that would be 16th August. So I had to literally wait 6 months. And that time I was obviously looking around and seeing what are the other things that I could back. One of the other roles that I was being offered got delayed. So I would have had to wait for 3 months for it to start. Didn't make sense. I rather go for something that I can just go and start. So I got in last week and I'm flying this Sunday. Just make the most of it, right? It's such a fantastic opportunity. I can't emphasize enough. You learn so much, and just the fact that you are accepted, appreciated, and you work within people who are so different from you. It really is a confidence booster. And go out there and spread some amazing stories about India because they love Indian and they love Indian food. And also one of the other things which I realized was because we have such a growing industry, at least for banking in India. Most of the other companies who wanted to hire Mountbatten interns, and because I was in the business management team, so I saw all of that process going through. and they specifically mentioned that they wanted candidates from India. So they definitely want to hire more people who they can eventually absorb within the firm. And one of the other things why this internship worked for me was I'm not starting as an analyst 1 level. If you would just go as a fresh graduate within the firm, you would start at an analyst 1 level. But because I had done this year and my boss was super and he wanted me to have credit for the hard work I put in, I am now starting at an analyst 2 level, which means that I can progress to an associate quicker than someone who comes in as a fresh graduate into the firm. So yeah, and
Kanika, one more question from me. This is on behalf of the first and second years. All else equal, do you think internships are valuable up between the first and second and second and third?
definitely, I can't emphasize enough because when you go for your final placements, they even if you mention like a small thing in an internship, which is probably a month, they really ask you questions about it because that is the sort of professional environment that you have been used to, and they want to understand that even if you work for 1 month, what is your understanding about it. So also what I saw when my friends were applying for the full-time jobs, the ones who had done 1 or 2 internships opposed to the ones who hadn't got a preference and they got better companies. And even if first 2 years you probably won't know what you exactly want to work in, so just even if you have a vague idea, probably I want to just be in the accounts division, or I want to probably be in a marketing firm, in an ad agency, some sort of experience really helps. And like I said, you can use that 1 month or 2 months period wherever you work to make a good impression and get a final letter of recommendation from them. And just imagine what will that go to say about you. You worked at a place for 2 months and they are impressed enough and they are willing to write a letter of recommendation that shows that you're a credible candidate. So please do internships. Also, I'd like to emphasize for the ones who really want to get into London before doing the program, summer school is a fantastic platform. My friend and I did it in 2010. I think we were the first ones to go from college, and so that's the first time when you go again. You are by yourself. First time you leave everything and you stay out of home for that long. And I'd done my schooling from Delhi, so I'd never left home. And you go and you study with candidates who are international, right? So LSE gets people from all over the world. And that is also one of the things I was asked on in my interview, in my final interview in Morgan Stanley, for something that I'd done 3 years back. So it does reflect on the sort of quality of application you make at the end of it. And yeah, just experiment and do as much as you can. One more thing, any questions? Come on, man, at least one question. Nothing? But I hope we're on the same page. Yes.
I just want to ask the structure of the internship, guys. So is it like normal summer internship structure, or is it separate structure from on-back internship?
It's not a separate structure.
But
You feel like a full-time employee. It's you have to understand that you are there for 1 year. You're not there for 1 month. That you just come and go. You're there for 1 year. They put in a lot of effort, time in you, and they expect things out of you. And like I said, so what I thought was I want to make the most of it. I was given additional responsibilities, right? So they did not. I never thought that they thought of me as just an intern, like who just come and go. But I was thought of. I really felt as a full-time employee, given the sort of access that I was given. You'd probably be given access like a full-time employee, except for a couple of trainings that would only be for full-time employees and not interns. The responsibilities are like that because they also understand, you're coming from an international place so far away, and they understand that, and you're going to a firm, it's not a joke. And for companies as big as all these investment banks, they are serious.
we train you before the internship, because most summer internships, which are held in Hong Kong, Singapore, or London, they train you for 1 week before, right? So they train you before.
No, so that would you are really following up trading, isn't it?
I
You
got
are
to read
right.
about.
Yeah, so that the sort of training that they do where you go into like investment banking where you work with IPOs or equity, you then have training for about I think 3 weeks or so in one of the core locations. So like you said, Hong Kong, New York, London, these are the core locations for most of the firms globally. And with here, you don't do that. You just go in there, and I was given about 2 weeks to sort of get used to all the systems and do multiple training. and most of these firms have really good training platforms, so you just want to go in there and do as many trainings as you can, and they are very motivating. They will not stop you. My boss didn't stop me when I wanted to work for different teams, and to be able to work for different teams, I needed more knowledge, right? How will I get that training? And they're very good online training. So in fact, that's one of the things my current team member also said, that now that you're there in the end, just do the training that are more particular to our product, and that's how you learn more. This one time, there was a woman by the name of Kanika Khurana. You can probably Google her later. So she came in to have this inspirational talk with all of MS, right? So all the employees were there, and she was a acid attack survivor. And it was completely out of banking, nothing related to banking. But just hearing these personalized experiences was, and I always remember that because I remember when I walked out, I was completely shaken. There was a woman standing in front of me whose boyfriend threw acid on her and ruined her life in like seconds. And you heard these things in India, right? It's nothing new. But the way that she overcame that, and she now runs an organization where she takes care of all the burn victims across the world. These are the things that inspire you at such a young age, You come out and I was really shaken because I was like, why would someone do that? But the bigger picture is that you tell yourself, if she can come over that, we can really overcome anything. And at my stage, when I was starting a career and I was still understanding how the world functions, all these small things really matter. One of the things I'd like to emphasize on, apart from this, is also a face-to-face session. Because these are the core centers, so all these MDs and EDs you'll be working with will be given global responsibilities. My boss is the global head of one of the divisions, and they've been in the firm for about 10 to 15 years. So you can just have a face-to-face conversation with them, in the sense that you can just walk into their office, obviously not just barge in, but have an appointment and walk in. And they actually talk, they're more than happy to talk to you about their career choices and about what gives them the caliber and potential and how they are where they are today. And when you're starting your career, you have so many ideas, and when you hear all these people and you hear all these experiences that they've gone through, I think you learn a lot. So I think I pretty much went for every session, and my boss was fed up by the end of it because I just didn't leave any session. But it was a great learning, right? And being an analyst intern and just having the opportunity to talk to someone who's been in the firm 20 years, is a managing director and is globally leading the firm, was incredible. I thought that was one of the phenomenal opportunities. One of the other things that I did was, for all of you in third year looking to go for masters or MBA, all these global schools, US or European schools, they have the information sessions in London very often. So I used to go for those sessions and I used to network, and it's again a really good platform, right? Because then you can, like I said, you can use this year to also think what you want to do next. It gives you that time and scope. So you should be doing all these things and making the most of it, really. When I left, all I knew was once I'm going to come back, I will tell myself, I don't think I could have done anything more. And that's how you judge. Because my dad was spending money on me. He was sending me with a lot of trust, and I had to live up to it. So when I got back, another flight back, I was like, yeah, I think I did make the most of it. I couldn't have done anything else. Awesome. And London as a city is absolutely fantastic to live in. I mean, it'll just grow on you. There is so much to do. You can have every evening which is different than your last evening. You can go travel to Europe. It's all of a sudden Europe is like a 2-hour flight away or a 2-hour on train away. Or 8 hours on bus. Can you imagine like going to another country in 8 hours on a bus? So these are the things you do, and you just explore, gain independence, gain confidence, make the most of it, and come back, and it will. So what I greatly understood was this internship will only reflect on your CV if you can justify it well. If not that you just go there and not work seriously and think it's a big joke and come back, that'll be a waste of time. It's better that you don't do it. Only if you know that it's going to help you in some way, you're going to make the most of it, is when I think you should go forward with it. So have some sort of goals ready in your head when you sit in to do this application, and live up your year.
Is it possible for one to work in that same company after joining for 1 year?
Yeah, it is.
So I am in the same company. Yeah. No, there
London?
Yeah.
So that only depends again. There's a lot of visa issue, right? So I don't know this, but if they have to sponsor your visa, I think they have to shell out some 25,000 pounds extra for your visa, because you go on a tier 5 visa, which is a temporary worker visa. But for a full-time employee there, it's a tier 2 visa. So I was not interested because I want to be closer to home. But my other American flatmates, I think they sort of pursued them, but they were not as appreciating, or they were not as helpful about that. But you can always try. I mean, I knew what I wanted, so I didn't want to stay back longer. Maybe go for a later master's, I don't know. But you can always try. Yeah, visa is actually one of the issues. And so one more thing is the housing. Houses are provided by Mountbatten. You would not know who you live with unless and until you actually get there. So when I reached there, I just walked into this flat and no one was home, and there was just empty bottles of alcohol everywhere, and I was like, ha, alcoholics, had to be Americans. And I lived with 4 Americans, and I lived in a co-head share because I thought that was again an experience. So I had 2 boys and 3 girls, including myself, in my flat, and it was a really good accommodation. But so the ones who do PGC, they will have to share their room. And I was okay with that. So if you're going to do PGC, you will share a room. So just be prepared for that in case you have never shared a room in your life. And now that is what I thought was incredible. I was living with Americans and I was only working with Britishers. And I think that is a phenomenal cultural experience because it does challenge you. Because they are so different from us. Value setup, the way they look at things. To be able to adjust in that environment, and to be able to live it up and make sure that you come out strong is, I think, one of the takeaways from my year abroad. And most of these accommodations are right next to your workplace. So I was based in Canary Wharf. It is like the much swankier version of Cyprus City. And my accommodation, which is again provided by Mountbatten, was a 10-minute walk from my workplace. So that can get you lazy, but don't be on time. So I walk, and that's how it is with most of the kids who work in Canary Wharf. You'll be based in a flat share in Canary Wharf. If you work in the city, which is about 25 minutes by train, you will be based in the city. One more thing is, so Mountbatten is an agency that works between people like us who want to apply and employers like Morgan Stanley. So they are the ones who will be putting in stipend in your bank account. It will not be these companies, because that's just how it works. And so you're given like about £605 a month, and everyone's given like a standard stipend. Don't be surprised when you get to know it's much lower than probably what an analyst at a full-time job in one of these banks would get. But given the fact that you're right next to the workplace and you don't have to commute every day, that saves out a lot of money, and it works well. If you have to travel, because I traveled like a lot, so I just had to plan accordingly, and which was again a fantastic experience, because you're given a budget, and then how do you make the most of it, right? You will be given stipend. Everyone's given the same stipend by the end of every month, so every last Friday, which was the best day of the month. And then your company will not play a role in giving money to you or anything. One thing in the end, just as a suggestion for all those of you who are looking to apply for MBA schools or masters, when I finished my internship, I made sure that I had letters from Morgan Stanley and the corporate volunteering that I did as a proof, because the MBA schools ask for it. I think you should go with the mindset of making the most of this year, exploring, experimenting, living it up, coming back with memories for life, making the most of it.